Okay, so good to see you. Here we are once again, chewing dry bones, investigating these subjects that are not the most easy and, things that people would like to do. They like to do breathing meditation or, something like that. So we're in our Illuminating the Intention class, and we're going to begin with a couple of prayers. I'm not sure if Doris has got them up yet. She was just, there she goes. Or maybe Mary Ellen is. Okay. So we're going to begin by reciting these prayers. Sangye churang soki chognam la Changchu badu dagni kyapsu chi dagi chunin gipe sognam ki drola penchir sangye drupa sho. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Through the collections I create, through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit migrating beings. Sangye chodang soki chognam la Changchu badu dagni kapsu chi dagi chunen gikpe sognam ki drola penche sangye trupa sho. To try to think of the meaning of that, we're taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Mahayana Sangha, the highest assembly. That means the Arya Bodhisattvas. So that distinguishes us from the non-Buddhists and distinguishes us from the Hinayana intention just there. And then making the prayer that due to the merits that I create, to the virtues I create by listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit sentient beings, is the generation of bodhicitta. And then the mandala offering, which is a condensation of all of the methods of purification and creation of merit. Imagine offering to our primordial guru, who is the omniscient mind, which has been guiding us since beginningless time. By offering this ground, this mandala, anointed with perfume and strewn with flowers, beautified in that way, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon, visualized as a Buddha realm, may all migrators enjoy a pure realm. And then requesting, O holy and perfect, O holy and perfect pure Lama, from the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom. So thinking of the primordial guru as the Dharmakaya. So without necessarily intending these clouds of Dharma that form in his Dharmakaya wisdom, please release a rain, send down a rain of the vast and profound Dharma, vast meaning the method side and the profound meaning the wisdom side, precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained. Idam Guru Rana Mandalakam Niryatayami. And then the prayer, Foundation of Good Qualities, we're going to recite because this is the first class in this sequence of 8 classes. Does someone have that up? Mary Ellen's going to put that up. Okay. So this was the prayer that was composed by Lama Tsong Khapa in Reading, where the Kadampa Geshes practice, where Atisha and Drondenpa had their Okay. The foundation of all good qualities is the kind and perfect guru. Actually, the translation is a little bit in error here. Actually, the foundation of good qualities is correctly following the guru, who is the root of which is the root of the path. By clearly seeing this and applying great effort, please bless me to rely on the guru with great respect. When I have discovered that the precious freedom of this rebirth, this auspicious moment, is found only once, is extremely difficult to find again, and is greatly meaningful, please bless me to unceasingly generate the mind, taking its essence night and day. This body and life are changing like a water bubble. Remember how quickly they perish and death comes. And after death, just like a shadow follows the body, the results of black and white karma follow. When I have found definite conviction in this, please bless me to always be conscientious in abandoning even the slightest collection of shortcomings and accomplishing all virtuous deeds. So those two verses are generally recited together. Many of the other verses are independent. When I have recognized the shortcomings of samsaric perfections, that there is no satisfaction in enjoying them, that they are the door to all suffering and that they cannot be trusted, please bless me to generate a strong wish for the bliss of liberation. So this encompasses all of the shortcomings of cyclic existence, all of the faults of cyclic existence. Then, through my being led by this pure thought, this thought of renunciation, with great remembrance, great mindfulness, alertness, and conscientiousness, please bless me to make keeping the individual liberation vows, the pratimoksha vows of either a lay person, if you have the lay vows, or those of a monk, make them the root of the teaching, my essential practice. So at various times in our practice, we take different practices as sort of like the heart essence of our practice at that time. At the beginning, we take the keeping of the pratimoksha vows as prominent. Then, just as I have fallen into the sea of samsara, ocean of samsara, so have all mother transmigratory beings. Seeing that equality, by seeing this equality with others, please bless me to train in supreme bodhicitta, which bears the responsibility of freeing transmigratory beings. Then, even if I develop mere bodhicitta, here it says only bodhicitta, without familiarizing myself with the three types of morality, I cannot achieve enlightenment. By seeing this well, please bless me to keep the vows of the sons of the victorious ones, the conqueror's children, bodhisattvas, with fervent effort. So it's not enough just to have wishing bodhicitta, where it says only bodhicitta. The implication here is that we have to engage in the practices of the six perfections, which we're going to be talking about. The first of those perfections today, the perfection of generosity. By my having pacified distractions to wrong objects, and correctly analyzed the meaning of reality, please bless me to quickly generate within my mental continuum, my mind stream, the unified path of calm abiding and special insight, shamatha and vipassana. It would be the next step upon, entering into the bodhisattva path, then putting effort into generating concentration and vipassana. When I have become a suitable vessel by training in the common path, please bless me to immediately enter the holy gateway of the fortunate beings, the supreme of all vehicles, the Vajrayana. And at that time, knowing that the basis of accomplishing the two siddhis, the two attainments, the common and extraordinary siddhis, is keeping my vows and samayas purely. So those who are thinking or have taken recently the Dalai Lama's initiation that he gave on the web the other day, important thing is to keep your vows and commitments purely. When I have gained effortless conviction in this, please bless me to protect them even at the cost of my life. Then when I have realized exactly the vital points of the two stages, the essence of the two tantric sets, that means the generation stage and the completion stage. What are the vital points, the essential points of them? And I am enjoying the yoga of 4 sessions with effort without being distracted by non-meditation objects. Please bless me to accomplish these according to the teachings of the holy beings. Thus, may the virtuous friends who reveal the noble path and the spiritual practitioners who correctly accomplish it, correctly practice it, have long lives. May my teachers and my fellow aspirants along the path have long lives. Please bless us to pacify completely the collections of outer and inner obstacles. In all my lives, may I never be separated from perfect gurus. May I enjoy the magnificent Dharma, and by completing the qualities of the grounds and paths, the bhumis and the margas, the paths, the 5 paths and the 10 bhumis, may I quickly attain the state of Vajradhara. Okay, thank you. So we're going to now put that into a little bit of practice by doing a little meditation. So sit comfortably, relax your body and mind. Remind yourself you don't have to be attending to anything else right now. Recognize your breathing, your respiration. Once you've recognized it, keep it in mind with the mental factors, smriti, mindfulness. Recognizing also with a wisdom factor, recognizing when you're breathing in and when you're breathing out to the exclusion of all other thoughts. You want to be relaxed enough that you're just watching the breathing, not controlling it. Letting go of your attention to your eye consciousness, particularly your body consciousness. Like in the Foundation of Good Qualities, when it's said to put effort into developing shamatha and vipassana, here you're putting effort in the causes of shamatha, letting go of distracting thoughts. You're just focusing on one thing, you're breathing. Then with your mind a little bit calmed by this first level of meditation, now revert to something that's more subtle, watching not just your breathing, but your mental consciousness. Consciousness doesn't have a form, color, anything like that. So observing it at first depends on observing the contents, the thoughts, the emotions, the feelings, mental feelings, as though they were clouds in an otherwise clear sky, or maybe like birds, things flying through the sky. And then recognizing the nature, the conventional nature of the mind as non-impeding, non-obstructing those thoughts entering or leaving. Focusing on that conventional clear light nature of the mind, the developmental Buddha nature that we all share, all living beings, all sentient beings. There is no fault that we have that can't be eliminated. They are not part of the mind. There is no beneficial quality that can't be cultivated by us, even now, even if we feel ourselves as full of faults. Sensing this quality of the mind, which is not observable other than with the mind itself, and recognizing that we are able to recognize it now because of this very life that we're living, this auspicious moment, this life of leisure and endowment. Which comes so rarely, as though only once. Because most of the time, we're born in the lower realms as an ordinary being. But when we do have a life like this, where we've are human, have met the Dharma, those teachings still exist. The great value of that is that we can utilize this short, transient life, this auspicious moment, to create the causes for the benefit of all living beings. We can develop the causes of becoming enlightened, from which state we can effortlessly and spontaneously, without error, lead sentient beings out of samsara into a stable happiness of nirvana and enlightenment. All of these living beings, even our enemies or political foes, people who are rioting or threatening us, all of them have been our mothers in the past. We have been in their shoes in the past. We have been out of control. Numberless lives in the past. Looked at in that context, all these beings exactly equal with us in wanting to be happy, wanting to be free of suffering, having this long history together of mutual help. They've all been our mothers numberless times. And even when they've been strangers or even enemies, they've helped us in a Dharma sense in helping us to purify our negative karma, being objects of our patience. For their sake, I should relinquish a quest for my own individual happiness of nirvana alone. It would be a sellout to do that, would be, from the Buddhist perspective, unconscionable. Be very selfish. For the sake of all living beings, I must become enlightened in order to lead them out of that suffering into liberation and enlightenment. To do that, I myself must become enlightened. In order to do that, I need to accumulate the two collections of merit and wisdom. In order to do that, I need to know the methods to do that. How to develop wisdom, how to create virtuous karma, especially through the special methods of the Mahayana, bodhicitta, and so forth. For that reason, I'm going to participate in the class today on Lama Tsongkhapa's Illumination of the Intention, which is a commentary on Chandrakirti. Chandrakirti's great text, The Entering into the Middle Way, that encompasses all of the methods of method and wisdom, all of the facets of method and wisdom. I'm going to listen, contemplate what I've heard with wisdom, and when I've come to conclusion of the correctness of something, I'm going to focus on that with single-pointed concentration to develop the three kinds of wisdom, the wisdom of hearing, contemplation, and meditation. In order to accumulate the two collections, in order to become a Buddha, in order to benefit all sentient beings. I'm going to participate in the teachings in order to become a Buddha, an enlightened being, in order to benefit all sentient beings. Even those, especially those right now, that arise in my mind's eye as strangers or enemies. And then bring your attention back to the present. Good to see you all. JC, Paul, Suvansh, are you in India?
No, whenever George, I'm back here in Portland. Thank you.
Oh, good. Your parents okay?
My parents are doing better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Jennifer, Snehi, hi. Richard, I'd said hello to the rest earlier. Sheila, Venerable Tendran. So before we begin, anyone have any questions? They've been saving up some irritation, some sand in the gears that haven't allowed you to rotate. How are we doing? Paul?
I think Doris had her hand up.
Whose hand up? I don't see.
Doris?
It was me, but
Oh, okay. You had your physical hand up. I see. What, Doris?
Well, I stopped because you said about, any questions about previous. My question was about the foundation of good qualities, if that's okay.
Yeah, definitely.
In the, I think it's second last, towards the end of the prayer, it says 4 sessions. I hadn't noticed that it said 4 sessions before. So what is 4 sessions?
So there's different ways, like if you have taken tantric vows or something like that. Sometimes people talk about 6-session yoga or something like that, right? But when we're talking about 4 sessions, it means when you're doing a tantric retreat, you try to let me get rid of this sidebar here. Here we go, close. You try to do 4 sessions a day. One just after dawn, or just around dawn. Then you take a break for breakfast, and you do another, because you need to relax between concentrated sessions in the practice of Tantra. Then you do another session before lunch, before midday. And then you take a slightly longer break until, maybe 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And you do a 3rd session. And then you take another break, maybe for tea or depending on your vows, or maybe soup or something. And then you do an evening session. You try to avoid dawn itself, midday, and sunset as periods when you are meditating, because the mind is more distracted at those times. So generally, we talk about 4 sessions. Does that make sense?
Yes, I'm now reminded of that in the retreats. I've done many retreats. But thank you, especially about the times not to be doing that, like the high noon and stuff like that.
Right. And of course, midnight also would also be inadvised to meditate, except for the fact that that's when we'd be sleeping. So, you need to have these 4 sessions, and then you need to have a period of sleep to regenerate the body and mind. So, okay. Anyone else have a question about the prayers or other things? Okay. So we have finished a long interlude in Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary, where he has gone over detail of why the hearers and solitary realizers necessarily realize emptiness. In Chandrakirti's text, it's relatively brief, just a few select quotations, but Lama Tsongkhapa brought it up because there were many people in Tibet at that time that didn't realize that had more wrong understandings and so forth, or were following the traditional interpretation of Abhisamaya, Alamkara, or other texts as though there could be, that one could achieve liberation, one could achieve nirvana without realizing emptiness. So we've gone through that. We've flogged that dog enough, and now we come to the section let's see, this is on Jinpa's text, page 106, in Hopkins' text 182, and those of you who are on a electronic version that doesn't have stable page numbers, we're on the outline, the quality that comes to be superior on the first ground. Okay. So this has 4 parts, 4 subsections. So there, in Tibetan tradition, there are outlines that are given in the texts. In the Indian tradition that came before that, in Sanskrit, there weren't the same kind of emphasis on outlines. There would be breaks, and there would be explanations how this section melded into the next section. But here in Lama Tsongkhapa's text, in Tibetan style, so we're on the outline, the quality that comes to be superior on the first ground. So this has 4 parts. The generosity of one abiding on the first ground. So what do you think when we talk about this perfection of generosity or giving? What do you think? Is that a good word, generosity, or do you think giving is a better word? Anyone have an opinion when we talk about the practice? What's the Sanskrit word? Does anyone know? Dana, not D-O-N-N-A, not like some surfer song or something. D-A-N-A. Dana can mean giving or generosity. When we talk about the perfection of generosity, I'm always a little bit hesitant to say generosity. Generosity sounds like generous, like you would give if you had, if you had a surplus. I think for my mind, giving is better. That's how Jeffrey translates it also, the giving of those who abide on the first ground. Anyway, generosity also works. The generosity of one abiding on the first ground, that's the first outline. The generosity of those of lower stations, Jinpa translates, or we could say those with a lower basis. That means those who are not Arya Bodhisattvas, who are not either Bodhisattvas before that level or Hinayana practitioners. The third is the generosity of Bodhisattvas. So that could be, so I misspoke when I said those on the first, those with the lower basis would be Bodhisattvas. He puts it separately there. So that would mean the non-practitioners. And the divisions of the perfection of giving, the divisions of the perfection of generosity. So those are the 4 outlines. So the generosity of one abiding on the first ground, or the giving of one abiding on the first ground. So this is verse 9 from the Chandrakirti's Karikas. I think there's something like 400 some odd verses. So we're only on verse 9, right? But they will come more frequently now. So the verse 9, Jinpa translates, at this point, the first cause of full awakening, the perfection of generosity, will become preeminent. Committed to giving away even his flesh, his very flesh, giving becomes a sign to infer his unseen qualities. Or you could say his or her, right? It's not male dominated. This actually is the second part of this verse. The third and fourth lines will come a little bit later. So Jeffrey translates this. Then for him or her, the first cause of perfect enlightenment, giving, becomes surpassing. So Jimpa translates it as preeminent. What this means is that when we talk about the perfections, does anyone know, do the bodhisattvas have the perfection of generosity on the first ground? Don, do you know?
No.
I think it is developed on the first ground, and it's the first ground liberated.
The perfection of generosity. Who just someone said no? JC, did you're unmuted there? Did you say no?
I said I don't know.
Oh, you don't know. Okay, Kendra, what do you think?
I said no. I said,
Oh, you said no. Okay. So why not? Why don't they have the perfection of generosity?
because only a Buddha has a perfection of generosity. They have the practice of the perfection of generosity.
Right. So there's a here when it says, Jimpa says, the perfection of generosity will become preeminent, and Jeffrey translates, then the first cause of perfect enlightenment, giving, becomes surpassing. The Tibetan doesn't have the word perfection there. It was talking about perfect enlightenment, the first cause of perfect enlightenment, because as Venerable Tendrin says, only a Buddha has the perfections, is perfect. He's reached Bodhi, or perfect enlightenment, samyak sam Bodhi. So the Bodhisattvas practice the perfections, and along that way, they have a special emphasis on those practices at different points. On the first ground, on the first bhumi, they have a special, as Jimpa translates, preeminent, or as Jeffrey translates, surpassing practice of the perfection of generosity on the first ground. You can say perfection in there. They have a special practice of that. They don't actually own, they don't have the perfection of generosity at that point, or the perfection of giving. Okay, makes sense? So at this point, the text continues, at this point, when the ground of perfect joy is attained, what is that? Anyone know? Jennifer, do you know what the ground of perfect joy is? That's the name of the first ground. So we say in Tibetan, Raptugawa, which means the joyous. So each of the grounds has its own nickname, right? You say its epithet, its name. And the names have significance. Like this is called the ground of the joyous ground, or the ground of perfect joy, because of the incredible enjoyment that the Bodhisattva has at this point. So it says, at this point, when the ground of perfect joy, the first ground, is attained, it is the perfection of generosity alone among the 10 perfections that becomes preeminent for that Bodhisattva. Or, when it almost sounds like he has the perfection of giving, but Jeffrey translates, when a Bodhisattva attains the very joyful ground, the joyous ground, the perfection of giving among the 10 perfections becomes greatly surpassing for them. So preeminent or surpassing. What does that mean? It means that among the 10 practices of the perfections, this perfection becomes especially special at that time, especially, as he says, surpassing or preeminent. That means the practice of that perfection has a special emphasis on that ground. Jinpa's translation continues, it is not the case, however, that he or she does not possess the other perfections. Again, it doesn't mean that any of them have the perfections. It's talking about the practice of the perfections. It is not the case, however, that he or she does not possess the other perfections. This supramundane perfection of generosity is also the first cause of full awakening. Supramundane perfection of generosity. Again, one has to understand practice of the perfection of generosity. Why is it called supramundane? Stephen, what do you think?
Oh, thank you, Venerable George. I was just sort of talking out loud. So you've just attained the path of seeing, so you've had a direct realization of emptiness. And I imagine you bring that into your practice of generosity, looking at the emptiness of the giver, the gift, and the receiver.
Yes, yes. So even before the achievement of the first ground, bodhisattvas are trying to practice this threefold practice, practicing all of the perfections within each of the perfections. Say when you're practicing the perfection of giving, within that you have the giving of giving, the morality of giving, the patience of giving, the enthusiasm of giving, enthusiastic effort of giving, the concentration of giving, and the wisdom of giving, right? You try to practice each of the 6 perfections within each of the perfections. So here, when the perfection of giving is, the practice of the perfection of giving is surpassing, is special at this point, and it is now the case that you have realized emptiness directly, as Stephen said, so it is a supramundane practice. Before that, say on the path of accumulation, the paths of accumulation and paths of preparation, the 2 paths that come before that, those are mundane paths. You may have realized emptiness. When Paul, would a bodhisattva on the path of preparation have realized emptiness?
They would not have directly realized emptiness, but they could have an inferential realization of emptiness, I believe.
You said they could have an inferential understanding. Would they necessarily have an inferential understanding of emptiness?
I think maybe so. Maybe so.
So the defining characteristic of having achieved the path of preparation for bodhisattva is that they have a unification of tranquil abiding and penetrative insight, realizing emptiness. So, but it's not a direct realization; it's an inferential understanding, right? So they necessarily have realized emptiness, but that's not called a supramundane realization, because it's still called mundane because it is a realization by means of mental image. Their mind is not fused with emptiness. It's not a direct realization, Okay, so here, this supramundane perfection of generosity is also the first cause of full awakening. This is, of course, to be understood in terms of the supramundane level of generosity. In one of the notes in Jinpa's text later, he says some of these sections, Lama Tsongkhapa is paraphrasing Chandrakirti, and the grammar is a little bit difficult. He's apologizing. I think also here it doesn't get to the crux of it. Jeffrey translates, however, this does not mean that he does not have the other perfections. The supramundane perfection of giving is the first supramundane cause of complete enlightenment. First supramundane cause. Aren't there causes of enlightenment earlier? Jennifer, didn't the bodhisattva have bodhicitta? Isn't that a cause of enlightenment?
Yes,
Why is he saying the supramundane perfection of giving is the first supramundane cause of complete enlightenment?
because now he or she has realized emptiness, and therefore it is a super mundane.
Right. Yeah. The operative term here is supramundane. So it's not just a cause. There have been causes of enlightenment that have been created previously on the mundane path of accumulation and preparation, but now this is the first supramundane cause of complete enlightenment, the supramundane perfection of giving. Okay, so although generally the subsequent perfections are superior, he says subsequent perfection is superior. The subsequent perfections exceed or are superior to the one that preceded. What does that mean? Karen, do you have an idea? When we say subsequent, so we say we're giving them an order, giving what? Morality.
Morality, and then patience and joy. But why would they supersede the ones?
Enthusiastic or joyous effort and what?
Calm abiding.
Concentration and wisdom, those six. So it says the subsequent ones, what does it say? Perfections are superior to the ones that preceded. What does that mean?
So I guess it means they're better, but I never thought of it that way. I thought they were all superior.
They're all good.
They're all good.
So generally, to be able to practice generosity is easier than to practice ethics or morality. To practice morality is easier than to practice patience, and so forth. So and especially when you get to wisdom, wisdom is superior to just concentration alone, and so forth. So although generally subsequent perfections are superior to the ones that precede it, generosity is described as superior here because, when we say, or the special practice of it is exceeding, how did Jeffrey translate? It's surpassing, because the power to practice generosity on this ground, the first ground, excels to an extent that is not the case for morality and so forth. So the bodhisattva on the first ground definitely practices the perfection of morality, definitely practices the perfection of patience and joyous effort and concentration and wisdom. But those practices are not something special, surpassing. On the first ground, there's a special practice of the perfection of generosity. So that's why it is associated with the first ground. You could find this in the Sutra of the 10 Bhumis, the Dashabhumika. Okay. So he continues, on the first ground, the bodhisattva is capable Yeah, on the first ground, the bodhisattva is capable of engaging in such acts of generosity as giving away their body and belongings external belongings. I guess you could say that the body, something on the body is an internal belonging without the slightest glimmer of attachment or possessiveness that would undermine the perfection of generosity. Or as Jeffrey translates, this means that here on the first ground, a bodhisattva has, as is said on the first ground, he is able to practice it by giving away his own body and external belongings, such that even the slightest attachment, which would be contrary to the perfection of giving, does not arise. Dana, you have a thought.
Thank you. I have a question.
Yeah.
You've gone over this several times, but I'm trying to come up with a more quotidian understanding of what most special at this stage in the path means. And does it have anything to do with this is what a person who has achieved this, has gotten this far in the path, not less far, not farther, is most capable of perfecting or working towards perfecting? Is it like a good teacher of academic subjects saying, you guys are ready for this right now. You're not ready for that yet.
Well, maybe something similar. In that case, the students might not be able to practice those other more advanced subjects right now. You say you're ready for this now. It may be a little bit like that, but they are able to practice. In fact, from the beginning of entering into the path of accumulation, the bodhisattvas would be practicing the perfection of generosity, or giving. They would be practicing the perfection of morality, and that would be enhanced on the path of preparation, on the second path, and certainly now on the path of seeing, on the first ground. They would also be practicing the perfection of morality, but it wouldn't have, the perfection of morality would culminate in something special on the second ground when they would be able to, for instance, on the second ground, they wouldn't even break their commitments, their vows, even in their dreams, whereas that is not capable here on the first ground. So there's a special kind of, what was it called, surpassing, extraordinary, or what does he call it here? What was the word that he called? I can't remember what he called it. Perfection, the preeminence of giving on this, because there's some special qualities that dawn at this point. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Jimpa says, without the slightest glimmer of attachment or possessiveness, or as I said, as Jeffrey translated, rather than saying slightest glimmer, as is said on the first ground, he or she is able to practice it, the perfection of giving, by giving away their own body and external belongings, such that even the slightest attachment, which would be contrary to the perfection of giving, does not arise. So those of you who may recite the Guru Puja often, I don't know if there's any of you do. I recite it every day since the Dalai Lama. I received commentary from the Dalai Lama, and he asked that we recite that. So in the glance meditation at the end, which we had a course at Shantideva Center a year or two ago, what does anyone know the verse about the perfection of giving by heart? Tendron's thinking, Venerable Tendron's thinking. Where did Venerable Palmo go? Is Venerable Palmo still here? Oh, there she is, yeah. Venerable Palmo, do you recite Lama Choba? No, okay. So in that verse, we talk about giving without attachment. You know, please grant me blessings to be able to perfect, to attain this perfection of giving, and enhance it by giving without attachment. You know, the methods to be able to enhance it by giving without attachment. So the ways to enhance it would mean, imagining in your meditation, like in Tonglen meditation, giving away your body. Your body emanates out and becomes like a wish-fulfilling jewel that fulfills whatever sentient beings need, whether it be food. For instance, the bodhisattva on the first bhumi can give their body and even relish giving their body, as flesh and so forth to others. You imagine sending out your possessions, your house, your car, your everything, and that manifests in whatever way that sentient beings would like to, whatever they need. And your merits of the past, the present, and even the merits that you haven't accumulated yet, but you will accumulate in the future. We say the merits of the 3 times. How can you give away something that you don't have yet? Nadine, does that make sense? How can you give away your future merits?
I can't answer. I don't know.
We have through dedication, through, when I achieve that, that's all, that's going to go towards sentient beings. Like someone who's makes a promise that even though they haven't earned the money yet, the money that they're going to earn next year will also go to your children's college fund or whatever. Okay, so there are methods to enhance that, to be able to, to practice that perfection of giving in meditation like that. For example, not only is the bodhisattva dedicated to giving away. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Where is it? He is, however, not yet capable of engaging in the morality that never engages, even in dreams, in immoral acts, which are the forces contrary to discipline, a capacity he will not attain. He will attain on the second ground. So he doesn't have that capacity yet, but he has the capacity to be able to give away without the slightest attachment or possessiveness. That would, if you had that kind of attachment or hesitancy to give, that would undermine or would sully the perfection of giving. Okay. Diana, you have another question? Your hand is still up there. Okay. So, furthermore, on this ground, the first ground, joyous, realizations that remain imperceptible can be inferred through his generosity. So Jeffrey translates this. Through his giving, one can infer the presence of unimaginable realizations on the first ground. So what does that mean? Anyone have an idea? Richard, what do you think? How can you, through his giving, how can you infer qualities here?
Yeah, I had questions about this when I read it. I think the best thing that you can say is that the kind of extraordinary giving that a bodhisattva does, like being able to give away one's body without thinking twice about it, suggests a level of realization and a level of non-attachment that can't be seen directly, but can only be seen through the giving itself.
Right. You can't see that they've achieved that first ground, but you can infer they've achieved that first ground because of their actions. Like, say, for instance, you may not be able to see a fire within a trash can off in the distance, but by the billowing smoke that's coming out, you can infer there's a fire there. Or in a valley that's where, that the walls of the valley obscure the fire, the flames. You can't see the flames directly, but you can infer their existence by seeing results of those flames. So where there's, fire generally is a cause of smoke. And so if you see the smoke, you can infer the existence of fire. In the same way, when you see certain kinds of activities like that, you can infer those qualities. Like, say, for instance, in the desert, famous example, if you're walking, you're lost in the desert, you're trying to find water, and you see birds circling around something in the distance that you can't quite make out, you may be able to infer that there's water there because the birds would congregate to a place where there's water and so forth. Okay. So furthermore, on this ground, realizations that remain imperceptible can be inferred through his generosity. Or as Jeffrey says, through their giving, one can infer the presence of unimaginable realizations on the first ground. And that's where the second set of two lines, the third and fourth line, come. His devotion, or their devotion to giving even their own flesh, is a cause for inferring the unimaginable. Okay. So not only is the Bodhisattva dedicated to giving away external belongings, they become committed or dedicated to even more generosity, giving away even their own flesh. Do the bodhisattvas earlier than this, are they dedicated to giving away their own flesh, their own meat, their bones? Well, we've mentioned this many times in the past in different contexts. In the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, when Shatideva is talking about how it's inconceivable how someone who's given up bodhicitta could ever find happiness in cyclic existence again. And in the commentaries to that, it's mentioned that Shariputra, in a very, very previous life, had been a bodhisattva. And he had not reached the stage of stable, he had not reached the first bhumi. He hadn't reached the stage where, bodhicitta was immutable. And he was asked to give away his right hand by a demon. And he cut off his hand with great, pain, but dedication with bodhicitta, and he gave it with his left hand, and the demon, dismissed that and said, "Oh, I can't take that. You gave it with your left hand." You remember this story, right? So he had not yet reached a point where he could do that, and the point where you can do that is when you reach the first bhumi, because you can give. You could give your flesh away before that, let's say, on the path of preparation, but you would feel pain. Here on this path, one no longer feels pain, but one actually feels joy in being able to give that. So their giving, I'm reading Jimpa's translation again, his giving becomes a sign to infer his inner realizations, such as their attainments, which remain unseen by others. Okay, so this is a kind of motif that we see many times in Buddhism, that one can infer certain qualities through seeing other qualities. You can infer inner qualities that remain unseen. They're not visible, mental qualities, by seeing the bodhisattva practice in certain ways. This is similar to inferring the presence of fire on the basis of smoke, Khapa says. This stanza describes how the bodhisattva is free of the taint of possessiveness in relation to giving away their body, life, and material resources. Now it's added here, life. We talked about giving away, what did we say here? They should give away body and material resources. Here it mentions life also. So what does that mean, giving away their life? Anna, do you have any idea? Bodhisattva giving away their life?
Not entirely, only that maybe through meditation. I'm not sure, Venerable.
Snehi, do you have an idea? Bodhisattva giving their life?
I'm just guessing, but like they don't have a sense of possessiveness. It's not like my body or anything, and so I can just give it away, like giving away a flower.
Yeah, it was just, so when we're talking, so it mentions three things here. It says, in relation to giving away their body, life, and material resources, as though life is something else. So you could give your body, you give parts of your flesh, and so forth, but to give your life sounds pretty radical. How is it that they give their life? Jennifer, do you have an idea?
I would think they just exhaust the causes for them to remain in that form.
Oh, yeah. Say, for instance, if a bodhisattva on the first bhumi was being attacked by a lion, and someone had given them a gun, they probably wouldn't be carrying a gun themselves. They wouldn't shoot the lion. They would happily allow the lion to kill them, to give their life, because they have a confidence at that point of being reborn. At that point, there's no, right now we're so attached to our present life. For us to, we would be very afraid if if thieves come into our house with weapons and threaten us, like in the stories on TV dramas, you either do this or I'm going to kill you. So you do it, right? You break into the bank, or you do whatever these thieves want you to do because you don't want to be killed. The bodhisattva would have no qualm about that. For them they could give away their life, of this life right now, because they know with great confidence that they will continue to practice in the future, that they will be reincarnated and they won't have a lower rebirth and so forth, right? This stanza describes how the bodhisattva is free from the taint of possessiveness in relation to giving away their body, life, and material resources. For even as they give these away, their mental state remains steadfast, not wavering in any way. So I remember in Dharamsala, when we were near the beginning of my studies of Buddhism, after the first Kopan course in 1974, we had to leave Nepal, and I think in the winter, the winter of 75, the beginning of 75, we went to Dharamsala, and many of us studied at the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives. And there were these little beggars who would come around all the time to the dormitory rooms. I don't know if you've experienced this. And, kuchi, please, give me this, give me that. And they say, oh, tape recorder. And, some students, I remember, brought questions to class with Geshe Nawan Darge, who was teaching through Sharpa Tuku and Kamlung Tuku, the translators. And, the question said, well, I'm supposed to be practicing bodhicitta, bodhisattva, so forth. They asked for my tape recorder. What should I do? And Geshe was very, very strong. He said, you need that right now. It's not the right time to give. You need that tape recorder to record the classes and so forth. So similar to the body and so forth. You need that right now. You're not able to give that, and it will damage your practice. So, there is a time to be able to give your own body, and there is a time when you're not ready to give your own body. Like in Bodhisattva Charyavatara, those who have studied Shantideva says, in the beginning, the Bhagawan, the Lord, teaches us to give away vegetables and so forth, to the beggars. As a result of that kind of practice, learning to give without attachment, you're able to eventually give your own body. But it's not the right time at the beginning to give away your body. So if someone asks you for your life savings right now, it may not, you're probably not in the right state right now to be able to give that away, even though you might like to. You can imagine that. Jennifer, what do you think?
Thank you, Venerable George. I just have a question about how giving away your body or life relates to the ability to manifest multiple bodies on the first bhumi.
Right. So here it doesn't mean giving up, letting one of your manifestations die. It means actually giving up your main body, right? So when one achieves the first bhumi, one has at that point what is called Yiki Rangshin Gilu. Paul, do you know how do you translate Yiki Rangshin Gilu? Do you know what that means?
Yike, the mind produced natural. No, I'm not.
Right. Yeah. Yiki means of mentality. Rangshin, nature.
Right.
Lu means body. So a body
Right.
which is of the nature of mind.
Right.
So one has a mental body at that time. And so one doesn't feel the same pain that an ordinary body would feel. So there's no worry about that. So it doesn't mean, Jennifer, that because you're able to have emanations that you would keep your own body and give up one of the emanations or something like that, I think. Okay. So how are we doing? Okay, we okay? So then text continues. The generosity of the lower stations. Sounds like kind of British. I think Jimpa where did he study? At Oxford or Cambridge? I can't remember. It sounds kind of British way of saying the text. Jeffrey translates the giving of those with a lower basis. So here we say 10. When you talk about basis or station, that means one what kind of level of understanding that you've developed, okay? So here it says this is twofold, so that the generosity of lower stations, or the giving of those with a lower basis, has two sections. The generosity brings the happiness of cyclic existence, and generosity brings the happiness of nirvana. Or Jeffrey translates, attaining the happiness of cyclic existence and of nirvana through giving. Okay, so attaining the happiness of cyclic existence through giving. This is the first one. All living beings eagerly yearn for happiness. We know that from our, our prayers when we talk, all sentient beings are equal in wanting to be happy and be free of suffering, right? All living beings eagerly yearn for happiness, yet for humans, there is no happiness without resources. Or Jeffrey translates, but human happiness does not occur without resources. Material resources, in turn, come about from generosity. Knowing this, the Buddha spoke on generosity first. Those of you who come from Catholic background, what is it? Christ said, ye reap what ye sow, right? So generally, I think Christians also know that, it's part of their culture that to be generous makes sense, because you're planting a seed that will bring about your own, reap of a harvest in the future. You reap what you sow. So it's talking about karma. Let me skip the second verse there, because the first verse is going to be commented on first. So Jimpa translates, all of these living beings eagerly yearn for happiness. So you may remember from the beginning of the text that Jimpa mentioned in his preface, or maybe you didn't notice that when words of the root text are found in the commentary, he put them in bold. Do you see that on your, in the written text and in the electronic text? You see the word all is bold, living beings is bold, eagerly yearn for happiness are bold, because they are found in the karaka right above that. And then the words in between are kind of like commentary to elucidate that root verse, right? All of these living beings eagerly yearn for happiness, which helps to rectify such sufferings as hunger, thirst, sickness, heat, and cold. Or as Jeffrey translates, all these beings want to attain the happiness that is a diminishment of suffering, or as Jimpa says, rectify such sufferings. So if you have hunger, how do you get rid of hunger? How do you rectify or diminish hunger? Ron, what do you do if you're hungry?
Eat.
Yeah, I could have read your lips. Yeah, and in order to eat, you have to have something to eat, right? You have to have resources. You have to have food. And how do you create the cause of that? You could say, get a job, go on welfare or something. But the primary, fundamental cause of having those resources is to have given in the past and created the karma then to have that. If you don't have the karma to receive food, no matter what you do, even you try to work, you'll be cheated by your boss. You won't get your salary, or something. If you don't have the cause, there's no way, from the meditations on karma, there's no way to experience a result without having created the cause. You know that, right? From the explanation about karma. So all of these living beings eagerly yearn for happiness, which helps to rectify or diminish the sufferings of hunger, thirst, sickness, heat, and cold. So sickness, the suffering of sickness, how do you rectify that?
Medicine.
JC? What do you think? Medicine.
Appropriate medicine.
Medical care, chiropractor. It doesn't have to be necessarily medicine, some kind of medical care. All of that comes about from having given that in the past. So, for instance, in Lama Chopa, when we're making offerings, we even offer, in one of the verses of Lama Chopa, offering medicines to counteract the 424 different diseases and so forth and so on to our gurus. Doing that creates very heavy karma because you're offering it to the merit field and so forth. So even if you don't have a chance to give medicine to those in need now, you can do it in your meditation. Yet for humans and their like, I'm not sure what chimpanzees and their like, are animals like humans? I wouldn't think so. It actually says la sopa in Tibetan and so forth. So Jeffrey translates it also. However, the happiness of humans and so forth. So that means the happiness of animals, happiness of pretas and so forth, happiness of hell beings. You might have a question about that. And so forth, is not produced without their enjoying desired objects or resources, such as food, drinks, means of curing sickness would mean medicine and whatever else, like I said, acupuncture or massage or whatever, clothing and shelter. So we need clothing, we need shelter to protect us from hot and cold, and all of that does not come about unless you've created the karma. So Jimpa translates, there's no happiness without consuming the resources that are the objects of desire, such as food, drink, cures against sickness, clothes, and shelters. So knowing that these resources in turn come about from the accumulation of merit born of generosity in the past, right? We just say it simply. They come about because of having created the karma in the past. You can say that the accumulation of merit, the virtuous karma created of generosity in the past. The Buddhas who perceive the minds of all beings thus spoke on generosity first. Leading others to this way of generosity is easier as well. I think that's a mistranslation on Jimpa's part. I'll read what Jeffrey translates it here. He said, the subduer, the Muni, right? Like Shakyamuni. The subduer, understanding the thought of all migrators and knowing that these resources arise from merit accumulated by previous giving, discoursed or gave discourse first on giving, discoursed on giving from the very first, for it is easy to engage in this method. It's not that leading others to this way of generosity is easier as well. For the Buddha, this doesn't matter whether it's easy or hard to lead sentient beings. It's easy for sentient beings to give, right? Discoursed on giving from the very first, for it is easy to engage in this method. Mikhail, what do you think?
Yes, sorry, I'm just not very clear about who are those with the lower station or basis.
So that would mean, well, here, talking about ordinary beings, right? Not the Arya Bodhisattvas. So it's easier to practice giving than it is to practice morality. It's easier to practice giving than it is to practice patience. So the Buddha, knowing that that would have a beneficial effect for sentient beings, taught first about generosity. So when you're accumulating disciples, and the four means of accumulating disciples, do you know what the four means of accumulating disciples are? Savash, do you know? Don, have you heard the four means of accumulating disciples?
Yeah, I think they're material generosity, teaching the Dharma.
Right. You begin by giving
words and being a good example.
Yeah, good. So you begin by giving something to people to ingratiate you, not as though like with the ulterior motive of controlling them or something, but to get in so that they appreciate you. You may give material to them, or food or something like that, and so generosity is easy to do. And so the Buddha taught about that first before teaching about morality, and giving advice to people also, teaching them and showing them by your own behavior to be generous and so forth. How are we doing? KT, are you, I just see a photo of you there. Are you following?
I made it back on. Sorry, my computer was all messed up.
Oh, no problem. I just, you could have been listening. I just wanted, making sense so far?
Mhm.
Okay. Sheila, you okay? Yeah. Okay. See if everyone's following. Okay. So the text continues, one might wonder, in order to attain excellent material resources through the act of generosity, must the giver be perfectly aligned with the criteria of authentic generosity? Or as Jeffrey translates, must the giver accord with the proper ways in order to attain the marvelous resources from giving gifts? Do you have to do it in the right way? Do you have to have like good motivation and so forth? So the answer is, this is not necessary. We should even respect a merchant who seeks greater wealth by giving away a small portion of their wealth, or someone who gives to a beggar in hopes of producing greater wealth. So, Sean, what does this mean? That means, say, for instance, a merchant who seeks greater wealth by giving away a small portion of their wealth. What does that mean? Does that mean like
angel investors?
Angel. I was thinking you might have some opinion like that. So does this mean, like, say, for instance, what is it called when we talk about wrong livelihoods, right? Giving something small in anticipation of the person you're giving to giving you something big in return, right? Like the benefactor comes and you offer them something, not with pure motivation, but with the anticipation that they'll give you something back. They're wealthy and so forth. Is that what's meant here?
I think so, yeah.
I don't think so. This is not necessary. We should even respect a merchant who seeks greater wealth by giving away a small portion of their wealth, or someone who gives to a beggar in hopes of producing greater wealth. What's it talking about? It's talking about someone who's practicing karma, who's trying to practice dharma, but with anticipation, oh, by my giving, I'll create merit to be wealthy in the future, either this life or future lives, karmically, not because of, some other reason, worldly reason. Is that legitimate? Like, for instance, at the time of the Buddha, Sheila, at the time of the Buddha, the people who were great patrons, what was their aim in, giving gifts? Most of the patrons, what was their goal in giving to the Buddha? The one who gave the park and the monasteries and so forth, meals to the Buddha. What was their goal?
To generate merit, accumulate merit.
No, I'm asking Sheila.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was going to say blessings to accumulate merit.
Well, their goal was to have happiness in future lives, right? Say, for instance, especially the patrons of the Buddha and his sangha and so forth. They gave these great festivals, mainly. Maybe in some cases, the wife was a bodhisattva and she encouraged the husband to do this. But in most cases, it was to create the karma to have happiness in future lives. But that's unlike the bodhisattva here. The bodhisattva has no aim in giving this in order to have happiness in their future life. This is not necessary. We should even respect a merchant who seeks greater wealth by giving away a small portion of their wealth with the anticipation that by doing that, they'll have wealth in the future. Or someone who gives to a beggar in hopes of producing greater wealth, thinking I'm going to give, a couple of dollars or 50 cents to the beggars and thinking that in the future I will get much, because karma increases, I'll get much more in the future. So that's not the bodhisattva's practice of generosity on the first bhumi, but we shouldn't disparage that because that will come about. In fact, the patrons who gave to the Buddha in anticipation of their finding wealth or resources in the future, they did experience that. Some of them were born as desire realm gods, incredibly wealthy, and so forth and so on. So one shouldn't disparage that or disrespect them. We should even respect a merchant who seeks greater wealth in future lives by giving away a small portion of their wealth now. We should respect someone who gives to a beggar, something small in hopes of producing greater wealth, because karma is, definite. If you create the cause, if you create virtue, you will definitely experience, you create the cause of something which will be enjoyable, unless that merit is destroyed and so forth. Making sense so far? Following? Toby, you following? Okay. Such givers are unlike bodhisattvas. These, when we say lower station here or lower basis, such givers are unlike the bodhisattvas who, under compassion's sway, under the power of compassion, do not aspire for the fruits of giving. They're not, the fruits of giving would mean receiving resources. They're not interested in the fruits of giving, but give celebrating the joy that is the wish to give. Or I'll read what Jeffrey's translated here. There are those who, like merchants, seek to gain an enormous mass of wealth by giving away very little. wanting far vaster resources than do even beggars, they are enthusiastic in giving. Let me see, am I in the right place here? Yeah. Putting emphasis on different words in that sentence. Such givers are unlike the bodhisattvas who, under the compassion sway, do not aspire for the fruits of giving, but give celebrating the joy that is the wish to give. Now, an ordinary giver an ordinary giver may be not only weak in compassion, they may even possess a ruthless mind toward other sentient beings. They may seek with enthusiasm their own welfare, such as birth in the higher realms. That is to say, they may make their pursuit of self-interest their guiding principle. It's talking about someone who understands karma. It's not talking about getting something back immediately, ingratiating yourself with others. It's talking about understanding karma. Even for that person who's, thinking to receive these benefits in future lives, even for them, it is from generosity, a generosity whose only positive quality, turning away from clinging to resources, is based on an expectation of the fruits of generosity, karmic fruits in future lives. That wonderful and excellent wealth they desire will come about. In this way, such generosity can become a cause that relieves the suffering of hunger, thirst, and so on. So I find in his note there, he says, since Tsongkhapa is here paraphrasing the text of Chandrakirti's commentary, the sentences of the Tibetan text are quite cumbersome. So I've mentioned that before. I'll read you how Jeffrey translates it. It almost sounds like reading something different. The point is that even giving with self-centered motive, where the key concern is to enjoy the future fruits of generosity, such an act will still lead to the benefits of enjoying excellent material wealth and so on. So what about this? What about if you give to the charity with the expectation of seeing your name on the honor roll or, in the newspaper, you give a wing to the hospital or the university, you donate, and I've seen this recently, that people demanded that I think I can't remember, maybe some of you know, it was either a university or something which wanted to take off the family name off of some gate or building or something, and the family was suing to get the money back then. Would that constitute generosity of this kind that we're talking about, low station? What do you think, Jennifer? Would that be?
Yes, because they still will receive the karmic rewards of generosity in the future, even though it has been tainted by worldly concern.
In that sense, yeah, but here we're talking about the giving of those of lower station, meaning those who give with the anticipation of receiving future lives. The person who gives to the hospital with the anticipation of their name being, carved, out there, painted up there. They want that. What did they say? I want it all and I want it now, or something like that. There's kind of sayings like this. So that's not even talking about the person of lower station. You're right, though, that even giving in this way, there will be positive results of that in the future, but it will be mixed with, because it's thinking about the happiness of this life, it will be what's called mixed karma, or the example, I can't remember the term that's used, like a rope that's made of white and black strands woven together. What do they call that? Remember, modeled or something like that. So whatever karma you create with that mixed motivation for happiness now, as opposed to happiness in future lives, which was a proper motivation of low station. Here it's low station is talking about those who have the proper motivation of future lives, not someone who wants it now, because they do create virtuous karma, but it's mixed with negative karma of their motivation. And when it ripens in the future, it will be mixed with some unfortunate circumstances, Mariella, what do you think?
I was just thinking about the story of that man who wanted to be ordained, and he went and he asked, and they said, no, I can't see any roots of virtue in your entire continuum. And then the Buddha found him abject at the side of the river about to throw himself in. And he says, well, no, as I saw when you circumambulated a stupa when you were a fly, you were following the cow dung, but
right.
So there's no intention whatsoever in the action. But
right.
It still accumulates it still creates the causes.
Right. Well, that's a special case because the fly circumambulating the stupa created this special karma because of the power of the object, right? So the stupa or the relics of the Buddha and so forth. So that's an exceptional circumstance, right? So let me read how Jeffrey has translated this little section. These people of lower station, as givers, their compassion is low, and unlike bodhisattvas under the influence of compassion, or what did Jeffrey say, under the sway of compassion, they do not seek to increase the joy. They do not seek to increase the joy of wanting to give without seeking the fruits of giving. What does that mean? They do not seek to increase the joy of wanting to give without seeking the fruits of giving. So bodhisattvas who are under the influence of compassion do seek to increase the joy of giving, of wanting to give, without seeking the fruits of giving. Moreover, intent only on their own welfare, the happiness of high status. So that immediately tells you when we're talking about low station here, it's talking about people who understand karma and are wishing to find high status in future lives. Their minds are extremely brutal towards sentient beings. They have turned away from the fault of holding on to resources and of not giving them away. They've got that virtue. They've overcome their miserliness, but anxiously hold on to their sole hope, which is for reward in future lives, not just reward now. Even for them, giving serves as a cause of extinguishing the sufferings of hunger, thirst, and so forth by bringing marvelous resources. Okay, making sense? Oh, Ron, what do you think?
What about the case of someone like Nobel creating the Nobel Prize based on his money he made in armaments? And he didn't believe in karma, I assume.
Maybe, who knows? I don't know.
Yeah.
So what's your question? If you give something that was kind of like created by wrong livelihood, at least Buddhists would say wrong livelihood, right? That's what you're asking. Like if a criminal who's made his money through cocaine or extortion or other things, if they give some of that away, you're wondering what happens?
I'm wondering, where does that fit in the merit system, so to speak, of virtue?
So even though they got it illicitly, well, it could be completely criminal in the case of Alfred Nobel. I think it was Alfred, right? what was arm trading. So it may not have been illicit. It might have even been legal to some extent, but it wasn't right livelihood. Still, you had resources, and by the fact that you're able to be generous and not hold on to that for yourself alone, you create some virtuous karma. So how you created the wealth, you may have in that way created negative karma, but in how you're giving away, that may bring you resources in the future life.
Right. I'm not looking for a definitive answer, but his inventions propagated more war, right? Because he invented dynamite and that kind of thing.
Right. Well, as we can see now, almost anything that you create that's new will have some negative side effects, like the atom bomb and nuclear energy and gene modification and so forth. It can be used in different ways. If you created those things with a virtuous motivation, new medical procedures or genetics or something, you probably created virtuous karma. You may not have been as skillful as a bodhisattva who would be able to foresee how those things could be used, but you'd still create virtuous karma, I think, if you had a virtuous motivation.
Does that continue on even after you passed away? Let's say your virtuous karma, is there a continuity that it goes forward?
If you create virtuous karma, I'm not sure what you're saying.
Right, if I create
virtuous karma, it unless it's destroyed by anger, it never gets stale. It doesn't get rotten like seeds left in the ground, in the moist ground where there's no sunlight. They might get rotten and they become infertile. It's not like that. Those karmic seeds will definitely continue, but that may not be what you're asking. I'm not sure. What are you asking?
I think it's close. I just wondered if they would keep going even after this lifetime, and that if I did something virtuous in this lifetime, would I reap benefits in future lifetimes?
Oh yeah, that's one of the basic tenets of karma. If you create virtuous karma, you leave an imprint on your being. You could say on your mind stream. We'll later, when we talk about where karma is supposedly stored, we'll address that. But you could say it's you leave a karmic imprint, like in the 12 links of dependent origination. Due to ignorance, you create karma, which is deposited on the consciousness, and that will remain unless it's destroyed through. If you create virtuous karma, that virtuous karma can be destroyed by anger. That virtuous karma that you've accumulated can be destroyed by abandoning the Dharma or regretting creating the virtuous karma. You give money to a beggar and later you regret that. You go into another store and they say, it's 25 cents. And you say, oh, I shouldn't have given that 25 cents to the beggar. Darn it. If you regret virtue, that can also cause it to be diminished or be eliminated, exhausted. But generally, karma, unless it's eliminated in that way, it will remain. Same thing with negative karma. If you create negative karma and you die, it's still on your mind stream. It's on your what do you call it, your bank account. I can't remember, what people say. Your negative karma is still there, right? It's not as though, oh, I'm dead. I can forget about all the bad things I did. They're not going to affect me any longer. No, they will. You know that, right? Yeah, okay. I can't remember. Someone Don, did you have your hand up or someone?
Yes, I did, George. I have a question. Because of in this karma we're discussing, because of the tainted intention, I guess we'll call it, could it only act as a completing karma as opposed to a throwing karma?
Which tainted giving?
The intention to get reward for your generosity.
Well, the different expectation. The wish to receive reward in future lives is different than the desire to find immediate in this lifetime reward. So if you give with the intention of finding some benefit now, like giving to see your name on the list of donors or on the building or something like that, that creates, that's generally negative karma and could be the cause of lower rebirth in the future. If you give with the if you give, say, a wing of a university with a slightly higher, in this case, it's talking about people of lower station or lower basis. That means not the bodhisattva's wish, but with the intention of benefiting sentient beings or of finding celestial mansions in future lives, that isn't negative karma. That won't throw you into the lower realms. In fact, that's what the patrons of the Buddha and his Sangha did with anticipation of finding in future lives. They weren't concerned about their reputation now and so forth, but maybe some of them were, but that would have been tainted. But they gave with the anticipation of finding, understanding of karma, finding happiness in future lives. So in the Lan Rim, Atisha said, any action that's done with the motivation of the 8 worldly dharmas creates the karma to be born in the lower realms. So if you do any action, even though you think it's virtuous, with the intention of finding happiness in this life alone, you may be kind of sympathetic to Buddhism and think there'll be some positive effects in the future. But if part of it's to find happiness in this life alone, that's impure karma. That's not pure karma. Does that make sense? Maybe that doesn't answer your question. I mean,
well, it does, but on the other hand, it seems that it could follow then that I could be in a lower realm but have good resources.
Oh yeah, definitely. And there's some animals, I'm sure you've seen these cats on the TV and the cat food commercials who have gourmet food better than many other people, humans. The Nagas are renowned, some Nagas are renowned to have jewels and possessions and so forth. It's said that the reason is that they practiced generosity in previous lives properly, but they neglected to practice morality. So without the practice of morality, they were born in the lower realms, but within that lower realm, they could experience the results of their past generosity. So there's some animals, and I'm sure you've seen some French poodles, and people, they have spas for the animals and so forth. And even I think there was some rich person who left their estate to their animal or something like that, to their dog or cat. Do you know what I'm talking about? So, I mean, it's possible, but they're not able to enjoy it because they're in the lower, enjoy it the way that a human could, because they're in the lower realms. It's said that the experience of a hell being, let's say in the hot hells, for an instant, say a cool breeze comes and alleviates their suffering somewhat, even that is a result of their past virtuous actions. Like in this case, granting someone a cool glass of lemonade and a few previous life or something like that. So it is possible to experience some alleviation of suffering or actual pleasure in the lower realms as a result of your practice of virtue. Is that answer?
Yes, thank you, Venerable.
Okay. Oh, Jennifer. Yeah.
Sorry, this is another follow-up question. Let's say for someone who has a vision, understanding of future lives, and gives to the hospital or gives to the beggar because they want to have a higher rebirth, versus someone who doesn't believe in future lives, but
Right.
gives to the beggar because they care about, the beggar's welfare, which is the more meritorious action?
Well, it's hard to say. I would say the person who gives with compassion for the beggar actually is creating more virtuous karma. They may not even know about karma, right? But because of their motivation is not for the happiness of themselves right now, but out of compassion for sentient beings, one creates virtuous karma. I think that might be, say for instance, the patrons in the time of the Buddha. So they gave to the Buddha and the Sangha, monasteries and food and clothing. There was traditional things. They gave robes, housing, food, all of these things that Lama Tsongkhapa was recounting through Chandrakirti's text, which are antidotes to, and they gave medicines and so forth, antidotes to hunger, thirst, hot and cold. So shelter and clothing, and medicines, means to alleviate the suffering of sickness and so forth. They gave with the anticipation of having an abundance of those in future lives. But if they gave to, they saw the suffering of the monks, they could have compassion. They weren't centered only on their own welfare in future lives. They could have particular gifts that they gave out of compassion for the monks who were suffering, or even not anticipating future lives. This is another category, even. Giving with the intention of alleviating suffering, feeling compassion and empathy and mercy for people, those definitely create virtuous karma. It's not immediately addressed in one of these sections right now, though. Okay. So now the next section, we'll get into this a little. Generosity brings the happiness of nirvana, or attaining the happiness of nirvana through giving. So it's this is the section that has the next verse that right here. Indeed, it is through the practice of generosity that they will swiftly, at some point, meet the Aryas. They will then cut clean the continuum of cyclic existence, and as a result, will journey to the state of peace. That means nirvana, right? So Jeffrey translates that as through giving, even they will quickly attain a meeting with the superior being. Superior is Arya, right? They will cut the continuum of cyclic existence, going to the peace caused by meeting a superior, by meeting an Arya. So what is this talking about? It is talking about people of lower station. That means they're not giving like a bodhisattva who gives simply to experience that other beings experience happiness. So that even the bodhisattva feels joy immediately upon giving, because the other sentient beings receive some relief or succor or happiness and so forth. Here is saying that these people who give in this way will meet a superior and Arya being. So what does that mean? Here, the commentary says, indeed, with respect to one who, while divorced of compassion, devotes themselves to generosity to secure their own happiness and relieve their personal suffering. Chandrakirti's commentary says, so this is a quote from Chandrakirti's auto commentary, the Bhasham. So he wrote the Karikas and he wrote some commentary to those Karikas. So in that he said, the sublime ones walk among those who give. I haven't been able to find that quotation anywhere. Also, Jimpa mentions hasn't been able to find it. Maybe in Paul's database, you can find this. You can check the Tibetan in the Sanskrit. Jeffrey translates, this is because the excellent are said to associate with patrons. Jinda tongpa pe tedu tampa dagi dopa yino she. So what this means is there's a saying apparently that Chandrakirti was privy to, that the excellent or sublime ones walk among those who give, or as Jeffrey translated it, what did he say? Associate with those who give, associate with patrons. So the understanding is that in giving, you create some kind of attraction for Arya beings because they know that you have created this karma which will predispose you to, making realizations. And they teach you, as a result of that, they offer teachings, lead you, on the stages of the path. And there are these beneficial effects that you will have, as a result of that, you will realize emptiness and achieve nirvana. So for instance, in big, when the Dalai Lama gives teachings, you sometimes hear of patrons who have, given this or that, and you might think, oh, that sounds like, like Richard Gere, Hollywood, like all these people, but there is great benefit to that, because in so doing, not only do actual Aryas realize that they've created that karma and that they are sort of suitable receptacles then, because they've got the proper basis to make realizations. They've created virtuous karma. Even ordinary beings who aren't Aryas will notice that, and great efforts at generosity, and will offer teachings to them. Indeed, with respect to one who, while divorced from compassion, devotes themselves to generosity to secure their own happiness and relieve their personal suffering, the commentary states, the sublime ones walk amongst those who give, or associate with those who give. So like say, for instance, when the Dalai Lama spends times with patrons, or when Lama Zopa Rinpoche spends time with these wealthy people in the Far East, you might think, oh, why are they doing that? Why does the Dalai Lama spend time with Richard Gere? Because they have realized that these individuals have some special aspiration because they've given, and they have the right, right credentials. They're proper receptacles in a certain sense for teachings. So it is through the practice of generosity that they will swiftly, at some point, meet with the fortune of encountering the Aryas. Then, from having such a sublime being teach them the Dharma, they will come to perceive that the cycle of existence is bereft of beneficial qualities. So as a result of meeting an Arya who will teach them the Dharma, they'll come to understand the shortcomings of cyclic existence, right? They'll come to perceive the cycle of existence, samsara, is bereft of beneficial qualities, you know? Did you know that? Nadine, did you know that cyclic existence is bereft of beneficial qualities?
Yes, I have found out already.
So even even we think, come on, there's sunsets, there's massage, there's, the opposite sex, there's beer and fame and fortune. All of these things are the nature of suffering. They will come to perceive that that samsara, the cyclic of existence, is bereft of beneficial qualities. They will then, actualizing the uncontaminated path of the Aryas, come to eliminate ignorance, actualizing the uncontaminated path of the Aryas, so that they'll realize emptiness directly, and as a result, they will abandon ignorance, they'll eliminate ignorance sequentially on the path of seeing, path of meditation, and thus cut clean the continuum of cyclic existence, the cut off rebirth in cyclic existence, the continuity of birth and death since beginningless time. And as a result of meeting with the Sublime One, an Arya, they will journey to the state of peace, means nirvana, the attainment of a Shravaka's nirvana, or that of a Pratika Buddha, the nirvana of a Pratika Buddha. Make sense? Toby, what do you think? I haven't heard from you today. You okay?
Thank you, Venerable George. I still find it hard to agree with some of it because I believe intent to be so important. So
Say that again. You don't agree with some of this because you think what?
Because intent is so important. So to do things lacking in intent would seem to always lack a desirable outcome. So where both of these books talk about the run-of-the-mill person like the merchant making those kind of offerings with poor intent, effectively.
No. If they're making we're talking here, the low station, as Jimput says it, or lower basis, means those who don't have the compassion of a bodhisattva. They're doing this for their own welfare in future lives. Remember when we talk about the Lanrim, you heard about the Lanrim, right?
But it says that is still okay. It should not be okay.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Say, for instance, when we talk about the individuals of lower scope in the Lanrim, and the individuals of intermediate scope and higher scope. So
that's all for one person and a different rule for somebody else. Then that doesn't.
No. Say, for instance, you don't yet have compassion for others. You're you don't have great compassion. Generally, Hinayana practitioners do have compassion to some degree. It depends. But your intent. You've heard the Buddha's teachings, you believe it, and you believe in karma, and you think that as a result of giving, you will find something better in the future. You're willing to put up with discomfort now. You're not intent on just the happiness of this life alone. You could put up with the discomfort, the suffering now, and not getting what you want now, with the anticipation of in future lives of finding happiness. That creates virtuous karma. So, and here we're talking about what do we say? Indeed, it is through the practice of generosity that they will swiftly at some point meet the Aryas. So this is talking about the generosity of one who is anticipating happiness in future lives, sort of like the individual of lowest scope. They will meet an Arya and they will receive teachings to be able to become a person of intermediate scope, seeking to find nirvana by realizing emptiness, and maybe even be have the fortune to become a person of greater scope, to hear about bodhicitta and how even to achieve nirvana would be kind of heartless, leaving all other mother sentient beings behind. Yeah, okay. You're good. I'm good. You were wanting them to only have good results if they had really pure motivation, right, Toby?
Intent is important. So
Yeah, right. Motivation. Yeah, same thing. Okay. So how are we doing? Anyone have any questions? I think we'll try to stop here. Pamo, you have a question? Venerable? No? I thought you were motioning. Anna?
Motioning that we need to stop. This is too much. We've been going for more than 2 hours.
Yes, we're going to stop now. Venerable, thank you for your patience. I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you for persevering. Let's stop now. It doesn't look like there are any other questions. We'll just do some short prayers, and then Pamo, where are you? Please have a good lunch and rest, okay? So Doris or Sheila, could you put up the dedication prayer? Or Mary Ellen, sorry. So due to these virtues, Gewadi, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha. May I become a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings, all sentient beings, all migrators without exception into that very enlightened state. May the supreme precious bodhicitta that has not arisen rise and grow, and may that which has not arisen yet, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. In the long life prayers for our gurus, Lama Zopa, you who uphold Shakyamuni's moral code, serving as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, masterfully accomplishing magnificent prayers honoring the three jewels, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. And to all our spiritual guides, the Dalai Lama, who's recently given teachings, you who are my eyes for viewing all the infinite scriptures, supreme gateway for the fortunate ones traveling to liberation, engaging with skillful means, moved by love, all illuminating spiritual friends. The intention being here, please live a long and stable life. So try to dedicate your merits in that way. We created virtuous karma, virtuous motivation at the beginning. We tried to anyway. We persevered during the teaching with patience, concentration. We created virtuous karma. May this not ripen simply in some superficial happiness in future lifetimes, but may it become the cause of my continued spiritual advancement from life to life, up to and including the achievement of enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. Okay, thank you very much for your patience. Sorry to have gone over. We will hope to see you next week. And those of you who are interested, we have a discussion group on Mondays currently. We will, you can go into some more detail then. So take care. See you next week.
Thank you, Venerable George.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Venerable
Mary
George.
Ellen.
Venerable George.